Hi there, welcome back to the Art of Business English. This is episode 71, and I've got a bit of an impromptu episode here for you today. And basically what I'm going to be doing is a little mini series on Ask Andrew. So basically I've got some questions from my students and from my listeners, and I want to just help you guys out by answering some of those questions and sharing those with the rest of the audience. So basically today, as you may know, I've been working on an emailing course, Excellence in Emailing, which will be coming to you shortly. And some questions have come up with some of my students about levels of informality and when we should be formal and informal and things like that. So as you're probably aware, when we are writing emails nowadays, we generally default to being a bit informal, okay? And that's sort of like a result of, instant messaging communication. Things like WhatsApp are making us a bit less formal. And as a result, people are really losing the art, or they're not really sure of how to modify their language to make it less informal and more formal. Okay, so basically, what I'm going to quickly look at today is a question that came up in one of my sessions. It was about the passive voice. And a lot of people are a bit scared or a bit worried about how to use the passive voice. It's quite common in English. So what I wanted to do today was to show you quickly how to use the passive voice in your formal writing. Now, there's one reason why we use the passive voice to sound more formal, and that is because it makes the conversation or the communication less direct. Okay, so when communication is indirect, it is more formal, okay, or it's considered more formal. The more direct you are, obviously, the less formal it is. Okay, so that's the general rule. And the way that we can be less formal is, but the way we can be less direct is by using the passive voice, conditionals, okay, and some fixed sentences. Now, a lot of this material I'll put on the website for you, okay? I'll upload a little cheat sheet with some expressions for you. But just to give you an idea, the passive voice, or voz pasiva in Spanish, basically is when we change the subject and the object, okay? We make the subject the agent, and the agent is the thing that's actually being acted upon, okay? So active sentences have a subject, verb, object, and the subject is normally a person, okay, that does a thing, okay, in this case. Whereas when it is passive, we're much more focused on what actually happens as opposed to who actually does the action, okay? So in this case, we can apply this to our emails, because in many situations in business, you're actually talking as an extension of the company, okay? So you can't say I or we, because really it wasn't specifically you that did something. It's probably company policy, or it's irrelevant that who did it. What's more important is that the outcome, or the thing, or the object that's being acted upon actually is the protagonist in this situation, okay? So, I mean, the structure is quite simple, and as I mentioned today, this is completely unrehearsed and unedited. So bear with me while I try and explain this. Okay, so basically, an active sentence would be like, I cleaned my room. Okay, this is the most basic form of the active, okay, or of the passive examples. Okay, I cleaned my room. So it's in the past. Okay, so I cleaned is a simple past. I cleaned my room. Now, in this case, it's obvious that I did it, okay? But in some situations, we don't really care who did it, okay? Maybe we're the boss of a company and we manage a hotel, and what's important is that the room is actually cleaned and not the person who does it. I don't know all of the hundreds of employees in this hotel, for example. So when trying to get this job done, I would talk more about the actual job, the outcome, which is that the room is cleaned. Okay, so, and that's basically the passive. So I would say then, the room was cleaned. Okay, why am I using was? Well, we put the object becomes a subject, so the room. Okay, in the active it's I cleaned the room. So we transform it. We put the room first, and then we must use the verb to be, and then we need to use the verb in the third column, which is the past participle or the participle form. So the verb to be must stay in the same tense as the active sentence. So what do I mean there? Well, in the active, it was I cleaned, so it was simple past. Whereas in the passive voice, okay, you would then need to transform the verb to be into simple past, which is was or were. So in this case, the room is singular, so it is the room was. Then the third column of our irregular verbs or verbs list, okay, or the participle form, which is with a regular verb, it's ed, so clean becomes cleaned. So remember, cleaned is simple past and cleaned is past participle as well. Okay, so you've got the room was cleaned, okay, because you are maintaining the tense of the active sentence, which is simple past. And then you're using the third column of the verb, which is cleaned. And it's really irrelevant who. We could put by me, okay, by me. But in many situations, we don't actually require, or it's not necessary to know who did the task, okay? So let me give you some examples. Now, I've got some here. So when would we use the passive voice in more formal situations or more advanced situations? Well, the first one is when the agent is unknown. Okay, the agent is the person doing the action. Okay, so if you don't know who did the action and it's irrelevant, then you could use the passive voice. For example, you don't know who paid the invoice, but it's important that the invoice was paid. So you would say to your colleague, the invoice was paid on the 13th of March. Okay, so there we have the most important thing, that the invoice was paid. And we don't even say by who because it's not relevant by who. What is relevant in this situation is that the invoice was paid. Okay, so you can see simple past because it was paid in the past. Okay, but no, you do have to remember that we can use different tenses. We can use the future. We could say the invoice will be paid. Okay, we can use the present perfect. The invoice has been paid. Okay, we can use conditionals. We can use all the tenses. The invoice may have been paid. Okay, so I'm using conditional perfect in this one. Okay, so it's quite flexible, the tenses that we can use. Another one is when it's a generalized agent. Okay, so bicycles are widely used in Amsterdam. Okay, so it's generally accepted that many people use bicycles. Okay, so active would be many people use bicycles in Amsterdam, but because it's generally accepted, we say bicycles are widely used in Amsterdam. Okay, we're really focusing on the bicycle and not on the people who ride them. Okay, another one is when the agent is obvious. Now, what does that mean? Basically, an obvious agent is everyone knows that if someone is arrested, for example, then it is by the police. So you don't need to say that. You can say, Mary was arrested. It's obvious that she was arrested by the police because the police are the type of people who would arrest someone. It wouldn't be, a fellow citizen. Okay, and another one is an unimportant agent. Okay, so I was advised by the company. Okay, in this case, I've put by the company. I was advised by the company that my contract had only 1 week left, so was about to expire. I was advised by the company that my contract was about to expire. Okay, so here, the fact that I was advised is important because it's important to me that my contract is about to expire. And, I don't know really, or it's not relevant, as I said, it's unimportant, because the company is a big organization. It's not important really. What's important here is that I've received some piece of advice or some notification that my contract is about to expire. And lastly, for impersonality, okay? And this is very important in organizations and in emails, especially when you're reporting on things like a meeting, for example. In a meeting, if you've decided something important, you could say, in last week's meeting, we decided to do this. Okay, but that really does put the focus on you. Okay, in last week's meeting, we decided to do this. Maybe because you're a number of people at the meeting and you are the managers of the company, it's a company decision. So we want to be impersonal because we don't really want to seem like we were the ones that made this specific decision, because it's generalized here. So we would say, it has been decided. Okay, so it has been decided that. And this really takes the emphasis off the people who made that decision. Okay, so these are some of the ways which we can use the passive voice in more advanced ways. I mean, I started with the simple way, which is like, the room was cleaned. However, there are many more ways which we can use it in our writing to really change the focus of what we're talking about and who did it, or if it's not relevant, then what was done as opposed to who did the action. Okay, so that's really how we use the passive voice in English. We use it a lot, and I think we would use it more than in Spanish. Okay, I mean it's quite common for us to use it. So you really need to understand how it works, and you start using it slowly, just by putting it in to your emails with some fixed expressions, and some of those I'll include on the post, okay, in the show notes for this episode, okay. But basically, that's just a quick overview of how we use the passive voice in English to sound a bit more formal, less direct, and how we can really change the focus of who does the action, or what action was done, as opposed to who did the action. Okay, so that's a question that came up in one of my sessions the other day. Now, if you do want to improve your email writing skills, then stay with me. Okay, I'm just working on it now. Super busy time. It's the end of this trimester, and if you're listening to this in March of 2019, Easter is just around the corner. So we're just getting things ready. I'm working on a new website so we can have a nice language management system there for launching this course. But if you do want to improve your email writing, then follow me, because we're going to be going into great detail on the course about what type of language to use, lots of fixed expressions, and lots of ways that you can really improve your email writing. I mean, most people write regularly. It's an essential skill for not only business, but for life in general. And a lot of people struggle. They grab expressions that they think are right. They copy things that they see in emails, and there's a real lack of clarity. So on the Excellence in Email Writing course, we will be looking at really like fixed structures that you can use, templates that you can put into place, and ways that you can really clarify what you're trying to say. Really looking at how you can structure out, like lay out your emails, how you can make your language less direct and more formal, which is really important. How to be polite, how to strike the correct tone. There's a whole bunch of stuff. I'm even looking at pronunciation, because sometimes when we're on the phone, we need to recite our email address, and you'd be surprised how many people have problems with that. So stay tuned for that, and I look forward to having you all join me on the course. And obviously there'll be a great offer for my listeners. Anyway, that is it from me for today. I hope you've enjoyed this quick episode on the passive voice. Head over to the AOB website, and I'll put up some expressions for you and some examples so that you can take those away with you and put them into your next email. Okay, any questions, as always, please let me know. I'm going to be dedicating the next few weeks to trying to answer some of those questions and help you guys out. Okay, so that's it from me. Thanks for joining me, and I hope to see you all next week. Bye for now.